What's up, everybody? We are live. Just waiting for some people to join us. Everybody? Yes. We are live. Let me know in the chat if you're here. Kayla E first. What's up, Kayla E? Gather, children. Let's learn. Why does the title say math lesson? That's a great question, Aris. It does say math lesson. Can I change it? Science lesson. Kayla E wants bonus marks. That's up to Brooke. If Brooke says you can have bonus marks, then you can have bonus marks. What's up, Addy? What's up, Justin? Robles? What is up? Did the name of the lesson change there, Aris? Holla, Aiden, Rihanna, Riri in the house. Brooke is giving Kayla E some bonus marks, so congratulations, Kayla E. We'll sprinkle some bonus marks in there for you. I need an animation for bonus marks. It just comes like blue. Bonus. What's up? Maher's in the chat. Aris says that the title has not changed for him. Hopefully it'll change soon. Because I changed it. And it says it's changed on mine. So, and Aris refreshed. On my phone it's different. It's changed too. So I think it's just you, Aris. I think you're crazy. Hey, says Kayla E. What is up, folks? Welcome to Science. We are almost done. This is crazy. It's like second lesson of science, and we're almost done. We are talking about water treatment today. All right. Now, this is a longer lesson, and first off, I might get carried away. I might go long, and so just tell me in the chat if it's getting long, and I can chop it off, and we can do it like a second lesson. We'll continue it on Friday, because this I find this topic so interesting, and so if I do get carried away and it's getting long, somebody in the chat just be like, MrStav, can we continue this on Friday? And we'll do that. All right. Marcus, welcome back. Marcus missed math on Monday. So Marcus, we gave bonus marks to everybody except for you because you weren't there. So sucks for you. Yes, Kurt. What's up, Kurt? What is up? All right. Marcus can't get those extra bonus marks because I already gave him to Kayla E. You were late. You missed it. Sorry, brother. Apologize about that. All right, let's get started. Before we talk about water treatment, I do want to say that my heart is broken. I am really struggling with what's going on in the world right now. For those of you that are emotionally impacted, which I hope that all of us are impacted. But those of you, I know that some people are really struggling with this, and I hope that, you know, from your teacher, I want you to know that it's okay. If it's impacting your work at this point, it's okay. I don't think less of you. In fact, you have all the reason, as if you were grieving a family member. This is a reason to grieve and to hurt and to feel pain and to feel sadness. So I encourage you to explore all those emotions that you're feeling. For all of you know that I was born and raised in a black community. I was born and raised at a black church. I was the minority at my public school, and I never experienced racism. I was never made fun of because I was white. All of my friends growing up were black, brown, Asian, and they always welcomed me and they always showed me love. So I'm very blessed to be able to say that. My best friend, my best man at my wedding was actually a black female. And she just had a baby, and I feel like she hasn't asked me yet, but essentially I'm like going to be her baby's godfather. And what happens in the States really breaks my heart. What happens even locally, it really hurts me to see the injustice that's happening, and it's not okay. And if you guys ever experience it, even as you go into high school, I want you to know that I'm a safe place. You know my email, and you can always reach out, because teaching is more than just teaching math and water treatment. All right, it's about connecting and being a support for you guys that need it. So it's never okay for you to feel any of this injustice. I want to share 2 stories with you from my life, in that when I was applying to become a teacher, pretty much every single interview I've ever had, whether it be as a supply teacher, actually to get into teachers college, to apply to the DDSB, to apply to become a supply teacher, then to be a long-term supply teacher, and then become a permanent teacher. Pretty much every interview I've ever had, they always ask the question, what does diversity look like in your classroom? And for me, growing up, I grew up in a mixed community, predominantly black. And for me, racism, or what is diversity? Diversity meant that we were together. That was just the normal. There was no segregation in my classroom. There was no you sit here, you sit here. And so my answer always was that diversity would look like just normal in my classroom. And for those of you that remember Miss Walters, the principal for last year, she's actually my mentor. She's the one that got me into teaching. And she said to me, that's the wrong answer. She's like, that is not what diversity looks like. She said, diversity needs to be at the forefront. It needs to be visible in your classroom. It needs to be visible on the posters on your wall. It needs to be visible in all of how you interact with the kids and how you make groupings. And so she taught me so much that for me, racism and diversity was just go about your business and be normal. And she said, no, it needs to be brought to the forefront so that your students know that they're safe no matter what color they are in your classroom. And so, that looks like pictures that I use. I'll scroll through different websites that I'm using to get past just a lot of stock photos or photos that are available are just are white people. And I spend extra time looking for videos or photos that do include diversity. Why do I tell you that? Is because I want you to know that there is change, and there are leaders like Miss Walters who are out there, like the DBEN, Durham Black Educators Network, that they are bringing change to our local places. The Durham District School Board is highly impacted in trying to become more diverse and more understanding, and a place where we have black leaders in place. And so that's, to me, very encouraging. And we need more leaders like Ms. Walters out in the world, that in our policing systems and all of that. Another story is that I worked for a long time in Scarborough before I came, and I worked hand in hand with the Toronto Police. And there were a lot of black police officers that were becoming into leadership roles, and they said to me that as a community leader, they said one of the greatest ways you can help us is to help diversify our police presence and impact in the community. And that was one of the top for the last 15 years, was changing the view of policing from being enforcers to being protectors and helpers. And so locally, things are happening here, and what we're seeing in the world needs to keep happening. And you guys stay strong and understand that act in love, act in purpose for your beliefs, for your cultures, and for those of you that are not black, we still have a purpose in this. And so I encourage you, if you don't know what to say, ask your friends and say, how can I best help you? How can you help me verbalize what I need to say better? So I hope that my thoughts on this are not well thought out, and they're putting them on video is a dangerous thing. But I want you guys to know that I care about you more beyond water treatment and Pythagorean's theorem. Okay, I care about you. You guys have a place no matter what your skin color is. But right now, the battle is for the injustice for black people, and that is right where my heart is, and I just want to see that equity and that getting rid of racism, because I believe that you guys are going to be that generation that completely has blown. We're going to look back when you guys are teachers and you're scientists, and when you're all those people, you're going to look back and be like, I can't believe that had to happen in my time when I was in grade 8. So I look with a smile forward at your future and know that that good things are coming for our world in the form of injustice and getting rid of racism. So there's no good way to move forward. So I apologize, but I wanted to say that before I talked and before I started teaching. But we are going to go into the lesson, and we're going to be talking about water treatment and how we take care of the water. Now, this lesson, okay, you do want to be following along here, okay? Nope, there, okay? You do want to probably take notes as I go, step by step, okay? So you see there's 3 slides? 3 slides that you need to be filling in as we go. Okay, so here's a map. Okay, so here's Miquel Zone Public School. Here's where we are. Okay, and this is Lake Ontario. Okay, so if we're talking north, south. Okay, so up is north, towards the water is south. Rihanna, thanks for those hearts. Appreciate that. Lots of love right back at you, man. So where do we get the water for our toilets? Where do we get the water for our water fountain? Where do we get the water for drinking? Okay, and the answer to that is right here, this lake. We are very lucky here in Ontario, and especially where we live, to be so close to the lake. So I'm going to show you this next pin. And so this pin, okay, this pin right here, this is our Duffins Creek water pollution control plant. Okay, so this is one of 2 plants that we have locally. Okay, so this is to show you that I'm the lead learner, right? You guys are learning, but I'm also learning. So when I started teaching science, I called this plant and I said, I would like to tour your facility because I would like to actually learn or show the students where you get the water, how you treat it. And they said, you've called the wrong plant, sir. And I said, no, I did my research. This has all the tanks and everything that I'm teaching the kids about. And they said, you're thinking of the wrong plant. This is the plant. And I said, I didn't even realize there are two plants. And they said, yes. One is the intake plant and one is the out plant. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of talk about elements that are in both. But we're going to kind of tour this facility a little bit more because they're a little bit more interesting to look at. Okay, but this is where we're going to talk about an intake pipe. This is where the intake pipe is that collects water from Lake Ontario. So I don't know if you've ever played Crothers Creek Public School in any sports, but here's Crothers Creek. All right, so here's the 401. All right, so just down here, you can get to that plant. Okay, so as I said last lesson, I had actually planned a tour. So we were going to get to go. They were going to provide us a bus, and we were going to get to go and walk through and see all these. But that had to be canceled, not because of COVID, but because I think students from other schools were putting things in the tanks. And as you're going to see in this lesson, a lot of these tanks are open air. And so it's very bad to contaminate water that's already been processed. So you'll see how much work it is. All right. So here's the satellite view. Okay. And if we were in class, I would ask you a bunch of questions. But I want you to understand how big this is. Okay. I would say that this building right here is probably the size of Miquel-Jean Public School. Okay. All of this is the plant. Okay. This is Miquel-Jean Public School, or the size of. Okay. Just to give you an idea how big these are. Okay. So we're going to look at it in a bit, but what you're looking at here is like a big swimming pool. There's a big swimming pool. We'll look at these in depth. You see these lines here. These are like bridges for the water technicians to walk out in the middle of the swimming pool because we don't want people swimming in our treated water. Okay. These are circular swimming pools. Okay. Now these are not swimming pools. These are water tanks. So I'm going to stop calling them swimming pools. I'm going to call them water tanks. Okay. And so let's keep looking. This is the exact same as this, except this is empty. Okay. Why do you think they would empty it? To clean it, right? So we have, these are full of water, and these have been emptied so that they can clean out. And then what they'll do is once these are clean, they will fill back up, and these will get emptied so that they can clean them. Okay. Here, more water tanks, and you can see waves in it. Okay, see all these waves? Okay, water tanks, 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 water tanks. Okay, tons and tons of water tanks. You can only imagine the capacity, the amount of water that's actually in here. Okay, and then all of these buildings. Okay, you have engines, you have pumps, you have indoor tanks. Okay, you have where engineers are and computers, and a lot of this is now done digitally. So just an absolutely incredible facility. Up here you can see more water tanks that are enclosed. Okay, it's spectacular, and it's crazy that it's so close to us. If you're ever driving through South Ajax and your parents have some time to kill, maybe drive by and see what you can see. It's so cool. So I'm hoping this will work over a live stream. Oh. Now, you're going to see this. This video is made by York Region, and that is because our supply plant, our water supply plant, actually treats water and sends water not just to Durham, but also to York, okay? Because it's such an amazing facility that it's able to provide water all the way out there. So here's a little drone footage. This is Lake Ontario, right at that South Ajax. And here it comes. And here are those water tanks, those swimming pools I said. And you can see the bridges. So here you see that one is empty. Okay. Here, these ones you can see are showing lots of waves. Here's the covered tanks that I told you about. Okay, you see all the waves. We're going to talk about why they're wavy and stirred up, whereas these ones are flat and not moving. You can see some empty tanks here. Right, these ones are empty, being cleaned. These ones are filling. These ones are full. Just unreal. Just look at the size of these. You see the car, right? So it gives you an idea of how epic and massive these tanks are. Okay, we'll talk about what it looks like inside. It got risky. They brought that drone real close. Okay. If you're watching in the chat, give me a number, 1 out of 10, of how cool you think this is. I think this is like a 10. I think this is 9 or 10. But maybe you think it's only like a 5 or a 6. I think that's just so cool to look at. All right, now I got to figure out how to get to the next slide.
And I'm a wastewater operator at the Duffin Creek Water.
Okay, Marcus, 6.5. Not bad, not bad. Not bad. Justin and Kurt, you're at a 7. I like that. Yes, Brooke, getting up there with me. All right. Oh, 7, 7.5, 7.5. All right, so you guys, you share my heart that this is cool. All right, so here's another video of the Duffin Creek plant. This one's narrated, and we're not going to watch the whole thing unless I change my mind. But, go away. So here is somebody who works at the plant. Her name's Carrie, obviously. But what she's doing is she's standing in front of some of those tanks that we looked at. Remember I said that they were empty? And here's, in the background, you can kind of see some of the bridge. So kind of get a good look.
Operator deals with at Duffin Creek on a daily basis. And what you can do to protect the environment and help us be more efficient at our job.
So here she is on one of those bridges that I told you about.
Built in the 1970s by the province of Ontario, and ownership of the facility has transferred to York and Durham region in the 90s. Since then, the two regions.
Just let me know in the chat if you can actually understand what she's saying in the video. I don't know how it transmits through the live stream.
Along with the provincial and federal governments, have invested nearly $1 billion into making Duffin Creek plant one of the most advanced secondary treatment plants in Ontario.
$1 billion. Okay, that's a lot of money that has gone into this plant that's like this close to your school, to your home.
My main role at Duffin Creek is to identify what is coming into the plant and ensure our processes and technology are working to produce clean, treated water that not only meets, but does better than regulatory requirements.
Very important what she just said. Okay? She said her job is to make sure that not only do they clean the water to meet standards, but Duffin Creek always tries to exceed standards. So think of it like you guys, right? I give you, this is what a B is, right? And if you want an A, you have to work extra hard. You have to do extra things. And so there are standards for how clean water has to be, and we're so lucky to live in Ajax, where we live so close to the plant, but that this plant is, they've invested billions in it, and that they have the technology to exceed the standards of water cleanliness.
Is returned to Lake Ontario.
And earlier you saw in her hand this little container, kind of look like if you ever go to the doctors and they ask for a urine sample. And it is essentially what exactly it is it's what you would use for a urine sample, but they don't use it for urine, they use it for the water. And they go all along the process and they test water regularly throughout every day to make sure that it's actually working and that there's no glitches in the program.
I'm an avid camper and fisher on the watersheds that feed into Lake Ontario, and very aware of how our lifestyle and purchasing and disposal habits impact water quality. After all, our cycle comes full circle. So what we all need to be aware of is the impact on our lakes, rivers, and the environment.
So what she's saying there is because we get water from Lake Ontario, but we also put water back into Lake Ontario, we have such a profound effect on our water, but also on our world. And that's part of this unit is understanding our impact of water systems, okay, on both natural and man-made.
Lake Ontario is one of the 5 Great Lakes and is the main source of the Greater Toronto Area's drinking water. This is why it's critical for everyone to do their part in being environmentally responsible in protecting our lake. I grew up on a property with a septic system and was forced to learn incredibly early how.
If you don't know what a septic system is, that would be like when you flush the toilet at Michael Jean Public School. Okay, your waste goes down and then straight into the pipes, which take it back to this waste plant. Okay, a septic system means you're not connected to a plant. So a lot of like people, if you have a cottage or you know someone who has a cottage, they'll probably be off the grid and they'll need their own septic system, which is this big tank where all your poo and pee goes, and then some guy in a truck comes and sucks it all out. Okay, or some cottages, they have to allow the poo to naturally. So what she's saying is she grew up on a house that lives using a septic system, and so she's more aware of what you can put and can't put into the toilet.
What you put down the drain and toilet affects the wastewater system. I learned that pouring these fats, oils, and grease down the drain caused blockages. Basically, the only thing that we could put down the drain was water, pee, poo, and toilet paper. That's
water, pee, poo, toilet paper. Those are the only things that go in your toilet, folks. Okay. Anything, feminine hygiene products, baby wipes. Okay. Those things don't belong in the toilet. Okay, because it creates a problem in the piping and also in these treatment plants. Okay. If you ever make bacon, okay, or you're browning some. Oh, I can't think of it right now. Ground beef, thank you. So if you're all of that, it creates oils. You can't just dump that down the sink because it hardens. Remember earlier in the year when we were doing the Great Goop experiment, and I said, do not put it down the sink, and I was adamant, right? Because these things ruin our water systems, okay, and they ruin our pipe systems.
We are manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
So this treatment plant that we're looking at has staff members on it all day, every day, even on Christmas.
There's always somebody here.
In her hand, you can see all the test samples that she's taking for testing.
During the process, we take multiple samples of each step of the process multiple times a day. A water champion can be anybody who is willing to learn and make a change to improve our water quality. It could be learning how to properly dispose of your fats, oils, and greases, as well as learning that personal care products labeled flushable really aren't. Making a conscious change to not buy them, or learning how to minimize their use and properly dispose of them. I do what I do because someone is always downstream. Watersheds know no boundaries, and this plant is the last line of defense before treated water is returned back to Lake Ontario.
I didn't mean to watch the whole thing, but I did. Okay, so how cool is that? All right, got a good look from above and from inside and from her perspective. So now let's talk about all of the steps. So let's go here, okay, and we're going to talk about step 1.
Mike?
Okay, so what you're going to do, let me just bring this over to the main screen for a sec. Okay, you're going to follow along with what I'm saying. So I'm going to give an explanation of what each step is and what's happening at that step. Some are more complicated than the others. Okay, so you're going to type in your own words what goes here. If you don't feel like typing, absolutely you should use the Google voice typing. Sure, use that. Okay, and then here you're going to find a picture in Google Images that would help you on a test understand this step. Okay? Now, you're going to see that on my PowerPoints, I've got pictures, and you might be able to find them on Google. Sure, if that helps you remember it. Okay? Whatever helps you remember, if there's a metaphor or an analogy that helps you understand that step better, do it. If you're like, there's no picture that I can find that helps me understand this step, maybe you draw something on a piece of paper, hold it up, take a photo, and put it in. Okay? So, here we go. Step one is the intake pipe. Okay? Water is pulled from a natural source through an intake pipe. Okay? So, here you can see into a body of water these intake pipes. Okay? Here's another version of it. Okay? This jets out, and it's there. Okay? Now, there's actually two pictures in one here. Our intake pipe, oh man, I forget. I think it was either 1 or 3. But our supply intake pipe is either 1 kilometer or 3 kilometers off of the shore of the beaches of Lake Ontario. That's how far out into the water it goes. So 1 kilometer is like 1 highway exit, right? So from Salem to Brock Street, or from Pickering to Ajax is 1 kilometer, roughly. Okay, so these intake pipes, they go pretty far out. Okay, this is a different situation, but ours, there's a long pipe. Okay, and it can either float at the top of the water like this, so there'll be some type of flotation device, and then it hangs. Okay, or you can have it at the bottom of the water, body of water. Okay, are you with me in the chat? Let me know if you're with me. Okay, so one of the things you should put in your intake, that it's a pipe directly into Lake Ontario. Another thing that you should note is that there's a cage over top of it. Okay, why do you think that cage is there? What is it stopping? Okay, think about it. Okay, foremost, these guys. We don't want to take these fish into our water treatment plant. We want them to keep swimming in there. All right, so that cage is, thank you, Kurt, thank you, Brooke. This cage is there to stop the fish from coming into our plant, okay, and into our process. Okay. Whoa, David's here too. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, David. Okay. So some other things, massive pollution, right? Major things that are in the water that are pollutants, right? We don't need that in our system. Okay, so we'll try to keep that out. Okay, so step one is the intake pipe. Thank you, Aris. Thank you, Aiden. Okay, we're gonna move on. Okay, step two is the bar screens. Okay, here's what I'm going to tell you. You're probably yelling at your computer right now saying, MrStav, you're going too fast. And yes, because it would make a really long video. If I was in the class, I would wait for you to find a picture. So what I'm going to tell you to do is write the explanation as much as you can, and then maybe go get your photos later, okay, if you can't keep up with me. Okay? There's no harm, there's no shame or disrespect. Okay? It is what it is. Step two are bar screens. Okay? Bar screens can look many different ways. Okay? So these are literally screens that have bars on them, just like the name, that someone was not creative in their naming, right? So these are screens that have bars that simply just filter water. Okay? And it's used to remove large items. Okay, so I'm going to bring this bad boy out. You know what this is? Okay, think the proper name is colander. But we call it a spaghetti strainer, okay, or ground beef strainer, or a strainer, okay. But when you look at this, you're gonna see hundreds of holes, and you can see me through. Hi, and we use it when we're cooking. We pour the spaghetti in so that the spaghetti stops here, but then the water still passes through, right? Because as a fluid, it can fit through those holes, okay? So a bar screen is simply a spaghetti strainer, okay? So I'm gonna stay, actually pulls my hair, that hurts. And so it's not just one bar screen, it's actually a series of bar screens, okay? And this photo here, that was a really bad drawing, is the best to kind of show you what. So at the first bar screen, there are huge gaps, okay, in the screen. Okay, and so this will get things like actually fish. Sometimes they see eels. Okay, so somehow I don't know how they get past the initial cage that was on the intake pipe, but sometimes big things do get through. Okay, a lot of pollution is collected here. This is a very, very scary photo for us, is to understand that this is water that we're taking from our lake. And look at all the human waste and garbage that's there. I'm not talking like poop. I'm talking about wrappers. Oftentimes, when you release a balloon into the air, right? It's like a ah, but that balloon actually eventually breaks down and can end up in Lake Ontario. I was just at the beach the other day with Everly, and there was one of those balloons. You know, the balloons that are this color. They're helium, and they're like really nice pictures on them. And that was coming to shore at Lake Ontario. And I was just like, that sucks, right? And so these bar screens are going to actually catch that. Now, our bar screens are actually vertical, okay? And they're on a conveyor belt. And so it goes like this. And so what's happening is the water passes through, the garbage stays, and so the reason there's movement is that there's the bottom, it collects that garbage, and then as it comes up, it drops that garbage into a disposal. So super, super cool. And then it continues around and it comes up again. All right. So that's what our treatment plant. It's actually automated. Okay. So there's step one, and then step two, the exact same thing, but just smaller holes. Okay, so this will get the next level of debris that passes through, right? Because you can still have garbage that squeaks its way through, right? So then it'll get stopped at 2, and then 3, it's even smaller, until you're eventually getting into these really, really microscopic levels. So if you really look at this one, you can see how big these gaps are, but then looking a little bit closer, the next level, they're quite tiny, and it just gets tinier and tinier. Okay? So none of these are actual footage from our bar screens. Okay? But here's a good look, right? When the trash gets scooped up and then drops into B, which is this where they catch the garbage and the debris, and then they take it away and they dispose of it properly. So, all right. So, I think we're good here, right? So step 1 was the intake pipe. You take in water from Lake Ontario. Step 2 is we screen the water. Okay, so we strain it. Okay. A thinner mesh gets, okay. The next step is chlorinating it. Okay. Now you've heard of chlorine. You swim in pools that have chlorine. Okay, so when we take water from Lake Ontario, we do the same thing. We shock it with chlorine. Okay? And what chlorine does is it kills any of the microorganisms. Okay? So these are the things that if we were to take a petri dish and then look under a microscope, it would look like pure water. It would look clean. You put it under a microscope and you'd be like, ooh. Okay? And I don't know if you can remember all the way back to when we talked about bacterium, single cell bacteria, and I showed you that video of the microscope. Do you remember that? Okay? And you were like, it's boring, the narrator's boring. Okay, but those are the things that this step is killing. Okay? So we're gonna chlorinate it. So if you think back to all of those tanks, okay, remember I said they're like swimming pools? And the reason they're like swimming pools is because it's water sitting in a massive tank full of chlorine. And these organisms are being killed. Okay? Now, you don't need to know all of this complicated stuff. What you need to know is that this step is chlorine. Okay? Chlorine 1. Okay? So, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because it's not the most interesting step. Although maybe I'll flash back and I'll show you, right? We have the chlorination tanks. Okay, they sit there and they just, they sit in that chlorine, right? So see how these ones were still? And remember on the video, some of them had waves like they were being mixed. Okay, so in these chlorine tanks, they just sit there calmly. Okay, and so if you were to walk by, you'd smell that chlorine. Let me know in the chat if you can smell chlorine just by thinking about it. You know what a chlorine pool smells like. You walk in, you're like, woof. All right. Okay. Ready to move on? Yes, Brooke likes this unit. I do too. I really like this unit. More than just this, it's just understanding how this impacts our water in the world. It's so cool. All right. Flocculation tanks. Try to say that word. Flocculation. Flocculation tanks. Okay? These are those swimming pools or those tanks that we saw that where things are going to be stirred up. Okay? So there's some big words here that you kind of need to become familiar with. Okay? And the first weird word is flocculation. Maybe you've heard of sheep, how they travel in flocks. Think about what flocks mean. So when sheep travel, they don't travel one by one. They travel in flocks, which means in a group of them. Okay? So think of that word. Keep that word in your mind. Okay? And we'll kind of explain that in a sec. Okay? So chemical coagulants. There's a cool word for you. Okay? Coagulants. So essentially, they're adding chemicals, okay, to the water. Okay? Now, let me do my best drawing. Do you remember last week we discussed that this is a water particle, right? So we have H2O. Okay? So that's a good particle. But then we want to keep those. Let's not use blue. So let's get some magenta. Let's get some bad stuff in the water. Okay? So these are impurities. There's that word, impurities. So I'm going to circle it. That's around the water. This is on a microscopic level. These are things that have escaped the chlorine. Okay? So what happens is they add in coagulants. So I need another color. Let's go gray. And so as you drop in these coagulants, they sit in the water. And so what happens at this step is you have to stir the water up. Okay? And think about when you're cooking, right? You put things in and they don't mix, but as soon as you stir, they start to mix. Okay? And so as soon as you stir this up, these coagulants, they start to attach to these impurities, not to the H2O. That's chemical engineering for you. Super impressive. Okay? So, these coagulants are added to the water. They have to be stirred to cause the mixing and for them to attach. They attach to these impurities. So that's step one of flocculation. Okay? You're going to notice that there are multiple flocculation tanks. Let's say there's the initial, there's 1, and then 2, 3, 4. Okay? So as the raw water comes in from those chlorination tanks, it comes into the flash mix. You don't need to know that word. Okay? But it comes into this initial tank where we stir it. You see a propeller here? It just stirs it to get these coagulants to attach to these impurities. Okay? The water then continues into tank 2, okay, which is another flocculation tank. And in here, there's a high-speed mixer. And so what that's going to do, this is where that flock, right? The sheep travel in flocks. This is where it comes together, okay? So we want these impurities to flock together. We want them to come and become one. Now it's really hard for me drawing with my trackpad. So we've got these impurities. Okay. And they've now got the coagulants stuck to them. Okay. One of the good things about this is they makes them heavier. Think about it. It's like if you put a backpack on something, okay, it's now heavier, right? So what they're going to do is kind of, drop together a bit. But remember, we're mixing it so it doesn't drop right to the ground yet. Okay? But as you mix it at the high speed, they start to flock together. Right? And those coagulants are designed to attract to each other and create this flock. Okay? So then that's in tank 2. Okay? So they've started to come together. And as they go to the next tank, the next flocculation tank, okay, you'll notice we lower the speed a little bit. It's now a medium speed flocculation basin or flocculation tank. Okay? And what we're trying to do here, we're lowering the speed because we don't want to break these apart. Right? Think if you're mixing too hard, it might break them apart. So the hope now is that they'll go into bigger clumps, bigger and bigger clumps. Right? So this one, let's erase him. And let's say that he is now joined here, and somebody else had joined over here. And so now you've got a bigger flock. Okay? And then over here, this guy, hopefully, he's kind of picked up a couple of other impurities with coagulants on them. All right? And so take a prediction. What do you think is going to happen in the next tank, in the low-speed tank? Okay? Ideally, this guy joins over here, and this guy from over here joins, and we have one massive, or just a couple instead of hundreds, we have huge pieces of flock that have impurities that have flocked together. Okay? Now think about it. The more flock that comes together, do you think it gets heavier or lighter? Right? That's not hard science there, right? When you put more and more things together, it's going to become heavier. Right? What happens to heavier things or more dense things in water? Okay, so I actually really like this step. I think it's such a fascinating step of the process. So step 1, water intake. Take the water from Lake Ontario. Step 2, filter it in the bar screens. Step 3, chlorine, shock it, and get whatever you can from a microscopic level out as much as possible. And then bring it into these flocculation tanks, right? So initially add the coagulants, let them attach to the impurities, stir them up a bit so that they join up, and then continue to stir them until they all come together, which takes us to the next step. Let me know, chat, if am I boring you? Is this too long, or is this good? Is this fine? Okay, can I keep going, or should we end it? All right, so on the screen here it says the water coagulant mix moves through the flocculation tanks, which stirs the mix to encourage clumping or flocks, okay, or large clumps. So that's what I just explained. Okay, so the water comes in, okay, the coagulants are added, they start to clump together, we increase the clumping, and everything goes out to the sedimentation tanks. So that's our next step. And if you're following along at home, we are on here. Okay, sedimentation tanks. Thanks, Brooke, for that feedback. Appreciate it in the chat. Okay, so if you look at the picture, you should recognize these from the video and from my overhead screenshot. Okay, now these are very important, and these are some of the tanks that I think they were having problems with kids. Okay, anytime water is sitting in an open air tank, you don't want anyone spitting in it, throwing things into it, because then they would have to take that entire tank and run it through the chlorine, run it through the flocculation again, and we just don't have time for that. Okay, so you see these circular tanks, you see the bridge so that they can check on it, they can look over it and not dirty it up. Okay, Aris says maybe one more than end it. I agree with that, Aris. I'm on board with that. Okay, so let's just fly back to our place, and you can see all of our sedimentation tanks, and we'll talk about why these ones are empty right now. Okay, so looking here, you can see the chlorine. Okay, you can see the coagulants, the flocculation, and then we come to sediment. Actually, I think these are the flocculation tanks. Don't quote me on this. I don't work there. If you work there and you're watching this, I apologize if I'm butchering this, but do my best for the kids. I know Brooke's gonna be a future engineer at this system, at the site. Okay, so the water comes from the flocculation tanks, okay, from that clumping, and it comes to these sedimentation tanks. And the goal of these sedimentation tanks is to just let the water sit, right? Remember, we were stirring it up, okay? And now we're just going to let it sit. And think about if you put anything that's been mixed up in water and then you let it sit, I don't know if you remember this. This is from last week's lesson. This was dirt that I got my nephew to bring me from my garden. Okay? And I showed you it. You can go back to the last lesson and you can look, and this was muddy brown. Okay? And it was all dirty, it was floating, it was nasty. I literally just let this sit on my desk since last Wednesday. It's been sitting there for a week. Okay? And I really don't think you can see it. I wonder if I use my flashlight. Okay, now this is not coagulant, right? I didn't add coagulants. This is just dirt. But this is what happens when impurities sit in water. They settle to the bottom. Okay, And so that's the point of these sedimentation tanks. We put the water there and we let gravity, we let nature do the work of purifying our water. And we let all of those clumps come to the ground so they're no longer in our water. Okay, so we started here, and then we went through all the flocculation tanks, so we had these clumps. So once we go to the sedimentation, these will settle right to the bottom of that tank. And guess what? Remember when I said, why do we empty those tanks? It's because guess what's on the bottom of these tanks? Guess what needs to be cleaned off of the walls and the bottom? Okay? And so this is a regular process that they will go through. Okay? All right, so the clumps are removed, they're taken out. All right, now remember, these are impurities, these are things that made it past chlorine, made it past the bar screens. Okay, these are impurities, they're taken out, and I can tell you that our water is incredibly clean at this point. I still wouldn't drink it. It is not ready to be drank, okay, or consumed, I should say. Okay, it still has a number of steps to go through that we will continue with on Friday. And this next step that we'll talk about on Friday, this was going to be your culminating assignment. You were going to create this part of the process. You were going to create a sand and a gravel filter that we would actually pour this water through what you made using a pop bottle. And my students make it come out looking like this. Super cool for you to hands-on do. And if you're interested in doing it, and you're like, Mr. Stav, I would like to do it, then contact me or let me know, and I can send you the instructions and you can do it at home. You would need to run to Canadian Tire and grab some materials. Okay, but it's so fun to do, and I was so like, I wanted to do it with you guys. I had a super fun activity planned. We were gonna have a blast in the classroom, and I know that you guys would have loved it. And I would have had to work very hard to stop Marcus from drinking it. So, yeah. So yeah, it's been a long lesson. So I'm going to cut it off there, and I'm going to say we have gone through the steps. Step 1, intake pipe. Step 2, bar screen. Step 3, chlorinating it. Step 4, flocculation. Step 5, sedimentation. Let it settle. Sediment. All right? Those aren't the same thing, but just saying. So we're going to talk on Friday about the sand and gravel filter, about a second dose of chlorine, about where we store it, and how we distribute it. Okay? A couple more videos to kind of show you some pretty cool of the inside scoop of I got some video of inside of these buildings. Now the actual video I have is from not from our center, but it's from what's it called? From Kingston. If you know where Kingston, down the highway, it's about 3 hours away. So from their water treatment plant, I got that. So I got some video from inside there. Aiden is saying, Mr. Stav, please make sure that next year's class can experience what we didn't. Aiden, you are an awesome person for saying that. I honestly couldn't even tell you because this might not be over by next year. So I really hope that they can experience what you didn't, but they might not even experience half of what you did. And so I want that to resonate with you, is that this has been a messed up year, but you did get to experience some awesome things, and we did do some sweet things. And who knows what next year looks like? You know, if this COVID thing doesn't go away, we're talking in a meeting is I don't even know if parents are going to send their kids to school in September. I might have 5 kids in my class. I don't know. So just think of some of the fun things that we did together in gym and science and math, and those would be extremely impacted by not having all of you in class. So But I love, Aiden, I love reading that comment. I'm going to take a screenshot. That's such a cool comment. So, so much respect for you, Aiden, for saying that. I hope you guys enjoyed this. As you can tell, I love teaching about it. I love showing you about it. It's just something that actually exists. You know, oftentimes we talk about theories and we talk about some things that you want to know. How does this ever impact me? I promise you that this lesson, this whole unit, deeply, deeply impacts you day to day. And I'm working right now to kind of recreate how this unit's going to look from you being at home. But there will hopefully maybe be some opportunity for you to dig a little bit deeper into how we take water and how we give it back. Because if you go on the street, and you know those sewers at the edge, the curb, right? Those sewers run right back. The stormwater, they run right back to the Lake Ontario. And so think of the oils that are coming off of cars, just the garbage that we put in there. Think of what we're putting back into Lake Ontario. And the point of this unit is to maybe flocculate in some of you a passion for taking better care of our water systems, taking better care of our water. In other parts of this unit, maybe some of you will become more passionate about taking care of our polar water and understanding what impact the polar water, that the icebergs and all that, how that impacts us here locally. So super neat unit, and it's just not the same same old. This is a different unit. I always say it to the end because it's so cool. So applicable. So I want you to look at this slide here. Okay, don't do that one yet. Wait for Friday. We're going to look at the Kingston water plant a little bit with me. Okay, so this is like a diagram summary that you have. And so we've covered most of this, right? So we have the intake pipe from the lake. We have our bar screens. These are pumps, right? These are just machines that will propel that water, right? Then we have chlorination. Then we have the flocculation tanks. We have the sediment, okay? And then the steps that we're going to cover on Friday. Super neat. Hope you guys enjoy it. Yeah, Brooke, they might not be able to do cells. Yeah, who knows, right? I'll tell you this at least. I won't be doing cells in September because having to touch the microscopes, put your eye on things, we're going to try and push all of that. So I might have to start with systems with the least number of experiments, and yeah, they won't be able to do as much hands-on. So if you have a brother or sister in grade 7, don't tell them. David, Carly, don't tell them. This is bad news. So, but hopefully there's a vaccine and things kind of clear up and we're able to get back to normal. And I hope for you guys, for your grade 9 year, to have things clean up. Anyways, no more talking. I want to reiterate that if you guys are burdened, if you are feeling horrible about the events that are going on, please do. That is okay, and that's awesome that you feel that way, that you're passionate. My heart is broken and it's hurting, and so I am with you. I am for you, and I want to see a better tomorrow, and I want to look back and when you guys are teaching with me, and we'd be like, man, you guys remember when I taught you in grade 8 that the nonsense, the chaos that the world was in, and how you guys have made it a better place. So if this is impacting you academically, please reach out to myself, Mr. McKinnon. If you feel better about reaching out to Miss Virginia Ratnam, okay? Even if you feel better about contacting Miss Lewis, okay? Whoever you feel most comfortable. Miss Buchanan is an awesome person that you can reach out to. And I know she would drop everything to talk to you and hear you out, okay? We want you to know there are places, there are people that you can confide in and you can talk to. Your family is always a great place to have these conversations. So we care about you, and we mourn with you, and we fight with you. Okay, guys? Hope you have an awesome day. Go make sure you're not flushing some bad stuff down the toilet, and go make some spaghetti. Yeah, make some spaghetti. So, have yourself a good one. I will see you Friday. Any of you that are finishing unit binders, okay, your deadline is Friday. Did you hear me? The deadline is Friday. Any of my math students, okay, your deadline for math, Friday. You need to get it in, okay? I am working my tail off in this chair, and my butt hurts from doing all of this marking and assessment, okay? It's a lot of work seeing, I'm recalculating your marks, okay? If this didn't help your mark, what could help your mark, all right? I'll tell you that people who have done their work, their marks are that much higher than all of their past units, okay? I'll tell you that pretty much everybody who I'm completed marking, everything that they've done, their math marks and their science marks are higher. Because think about this, it's a free pass, right? Anything that you didn't do well on, I don't use. Like, when in your education will you ever be able to say this again, right? You hand in everything and anything that you can, and I'll just take your best marks, and your mark goes up, okay? Later, you guys. Take care. Be safe. Go play outside. Be physically active. Be awesome today. Love you guys. End stream. You're welcome, Jose. You're welcome, Brooke. Later, Marcus. Later, Kurt. Later. Bye, Kayla E. You're welcome. Bye, Aris.